one wants to treat both of them, not just treat the depression. Now, this is probably the reigning theory about what's going on with older adults who have not had depression earlier in their lives and have depression for the first time when they're old. And a geriatric psychiatrist, Alexopoulos, has been the main person writing about this, but a number of other people are. At one time, the term that was used was vascular depression, and this goes together with this idea of cardiovascular disease as a risk factor. But he's now calling it depression executive dysfunction syndrome of late life. Doesn't vascular depression sound better? So as people develop their theories, the names of their theories tend to get more words in them. So what this is describing is a combination of things. And why he dropped vascular depression is it's clearly that there is not always vascular disease, but there often is. So there are cognitive deficits, and particularly in the area of executive functioning, which is the planning, the being able to inhibit a response that would be inappropriate. There are often neurologic findings, including white matter hyperintensity, so this is related to vascular damage to the brain, and this would be seen on neuroimaging. And the kind of pathways that are being disrupted are pathways involved in regulating mood. So there's a thought that this syndrome accounts for some proportion of depression in older adults who've never had depression before in their lives. And I am not able to tell you what portion. I don't think anyone is. It may be more a belief system, what proportion it accounts for, than research at this point. But clearly there are strong data to suggest that this is often what is going on. Now, in addition then, so this would be in some ways a late life diathesis, because your brain just isn't doing for you what had been doing for you earlier. And this would mean that it's going to be harder to manage in the face of the kinds of things that aging throws at one. So this is continuing from this same review paper, and this is probably an elaborated version of Lewinna's ABC model, is that in addition we would suggest that one might think about depression in older adults using the following kind of logic. It's clearly established that lack of events in your life that are related to something positive helps to explain depression. This is true at all ages. And often a pathway to a low rate of positive outcomes is limitation of activities. Limitation of activities can be due to stressful life events, loss of social roles, loss of spouse. It can also be due to long-standing vulnerabilities, more neurotic people. And it can also be due to changes in health, physical ability, or cognitive ability, including that kind of vascular syndrome that we looked at. So all of these things can conspire to contribute to limiting activities and having a low rate of positive outcomes. And so once all that is packaged together, the next thing that can start happening is that self-critical thinking gets pulled in. And that self-critical thinking then gets into the vicious cycle, again, that Lewinna was describing with her ABC picture. So The nice thing about this model is it tells you places to intervene. And it can include looking at the self-critical cognitions. It can include looking at increasing activities that will change rate of positive outcomes. So it's looking at activation as well as directly attacking some of the dysfunctional control. So we come back to Lissy's question, is why is not every old person in a profound state of depression? And this leads us to consider the other half of the diagram, which is the protective factors. So what can buffer against depression in the context of the kinds of physical illness, biologic changes that occur with age, and in the context of the kind of stressful events, particularly losses that often accompany aging? So some of these things include just resources, and resources can start with socioeconomic advantage, which again has a cumulative protective effect. Education, and all the kinds of good health, good practices, good health habits, all the resources that one can bring over the whole lifespan to older age. In addition to resources, older adults who do not get depressed tend to have learned particularly well how to manage stressful life events in their lives. And I would point in particular to the idea of emotion regulation and sense of mastery. So some older people can have the same stressful life events as others and not get depressed. And part of the explanation for why not to get depressed is these psychological strategies for managing events. And then finally, giving some importance to the idea of meaningful engagement. And I think what's meaningful is in part in the person who's engaging. I can't decide what's meaningful for you, and that meaningful engagement is important. So if you go back to this low rate of events with a positive outcome, one way of making sure to maintain a level of events with a positive outcome is meaningful engagement. And underlining meaningful is important because if you think about sort of prototypic senior-centered programs, there is often an emphasis on activity, and that meaningful engagement piece kind of gets lost in the shuffle, which is why I want to single it out and to underline it. Mm-hmm.
This is kind of borrowing more also from like a positive side, this question, but our statement, but it seems like people think about depression as being mutually exclusive with, or not, like you can't be depressed and you can't be satisfied at the same time. But it seems like maybe older people also have more to be happier about, and it acts as a buffer against sort of depression.
Actually, in the study of affect in older adults more than younger adults have mixed emotions. And we'll look a little bit more at CESD symptoms, since that's my favorite self-report depression scale. But in older adults, it's more likely people might endorse both happy and sad than in younger adults. So it's not
that it's